Obviously, there's infections out there in the community. People are not necessarily that confident. We're seeing the unemployment rate increase. So that's offsetting some of the positives that we're starting to see develop. But with on-site auctions and open for homes going ahead, there's going to be a little bit more activity in the housing market going forward. Over the last decade, we've seen net overseas migration to Australia of about 216,000 people. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has said that he expects we're going to see an 85% fall in overseas migration to Australia over the next year. So we are going to see a significant impact on population growth. And it means that the population of Australia is probably going to see migration rates the slowest we've seen since World War II. It's important to remember, though, that the figures we're quoting are net figures. That means the difference between the people coming to Australia and the people leaving Australia. Now, overwhelmingly, we get more people coming to Australia than leave, but you would think that there's not going to be too many people leaving Australia over the next little while to go and move overseas. But equally, we're going to see a big fall away in people coming and moving to Australia because the international borders are shut. In terms of where people move to, overwhelmingly, Sydney and Melbourne are their locations of choice. And this makes sense when you consider they're the largest cities, most job opportunity. We see a strong trend towards inner city suburbs and areas around major universities. Obviously, we do get a lot of overseas students coming to Australia. Sydney and Melbourne are really the ones that are going to be impacted most dramatically, and Sydney probably more so than Melbourne. Melbourne isn't as heavily reliant on net overseas migration for population growth as Sydney is, because Sydney does see a large outflow of people to other states and territories every single year. In terms of the property market, the fall away in overseas migration is going to have an impact, probably more so initially on the rental market, because a lot of people don't just move to Australia and have purchased the home already. They move into the rental accommodation. So again, those inner city rental markets are really going to feel the brunt of this slowdown in net overseas migration. And then longer term, that does have an impact on demand for housing going forward. In terms of the cities that are going to fare best, well, the smaller capital cities really are much less reliant on net overseas migration than other parts of the country. So if we look at Darwin, if we look at Canberra, and if we look at Hobart, they're certainly the least reliant on net overseas migration. Melbourne will fare better than Sydney, largely because it's not as heavily reliant on its population growth just coming from net overseas migration. It does see a large chunk of population growth also coming from interstate migration. Now, that will stop for a period of time during COVID-19, of course, but it's likely to open up a lot quicker than the international borders.